Hi, I'm Lana with Red Ice. It's true, you just can't argue with a leftist.
So, this is a response video to a response video. TJ found this video called Questions No Liberal Can Answer, and he decided to answer them. And he answered them wrong. So I decided that because I'm a masochist, I'm going to chime in on this conversation. So it's going to be a fairly simple format. First, Lana, that's the Nazi woman who is asking the questions, and oh, don't worry, you'll see why she's a Nazi. First, she asks a question, and I'll respond to that, and then TJ gives his answer, and I'll explain to you why his answer is wrong. Okay, so let's just get started, shall we?
1. Gotta start with this one. If you're so pro-mass non-European immigration, why do you live in a white neighborhood? They may say, well, this town has plenty of diversity. Yeah, down there, not where you live, up here. Why aren't you living in an immigrant refugee part of town?
Wait, what? What makes you think all liberals live in white neighborhoods? What makes you think all liberals are white? This really kind of betrays the Eurocentrism of her outlook now, doesn't it? There's a great video by Contrapoints on this topic. I'm just going to link that.
I mean, my neighborhood is not a white neighborhood. It's a neighborhood that is predominantly white. I live in a predominantly white area.
What? His neighborhood's not a white neighborhood, but it's a predominantly white neighborhood? Does TJ know what words mean? Okay, I get it. What he's trying to say is that his neighborhood is not white by design, it's white by sheer happenstance. You know, absent any structural factors like racism. This is why I linked to the video by Contrapoints, because she covers this much better than I could, but suffice it to say, TJ's an idiot.
In fact, I kind of like being around people who don't speak English. When it's like I'm at a restaurant or something, and the people behind me are speaking Spanish, at least I don't have to listen to their insipid conversation. At least instead of like, and so I told Debbie, like, oh my God, you cannot wear that. And she was like, I don't have to listen to that. I can just listen to people. Yeah, all right, whatever.
Totally not racist. No, not at all.
What percentage of America can be white? 60%? 40? 15? 2%?
Okay, so this question exposes a flaw in the way conservatives think. Mainly, they think it's a numbers game. So to illustrate my point, conservatives will see an article that says something like 85% of CEOs are white, and they'll see leftists objecting to that. Now, to be clear, that is not an actual statistic. I do not know the percentage of white CEOs. I am inventing a hypothetical statistic for the purpose of a hypothetical conversation. So, conservatives will see an article that says something like 85% of CEOs are white, and they'll see leftists objecting to that, and they'll think the problem is the 85%. No. The problem is not the number itself. It is the structural forces that created that number. Structural forces like light skin privilege, which does not just apply to white people. So if you're a person of color with particularly light skin, you will have advantages over a person of color with darker skin. Your skin tone has absolutely no relevance to your intelligence or your competence, and it is completely unfair to judge people on that basis. And yet, many people subconsciously do judge other people on that basis. It is these attitudes and the structural forces that arise as a result of these attitudes that leftists critique.
I don't really give a shit. I don't give a shit about what color people are. You know, as long as we live in a society that respects freedom and individuality, and we're not fucking, you know, murdering each other in the streets and shit, I don't care. I don't care what fucking color anybody is. Why are you so obsessed?
So this is more of TJ's I don't see color bullshit, which is a privilege afforded only to white people. Everybody else has to see color, because they will be subject to structural forces like racism, whether they recognize those forces or not.
Sir.
At what point is it okay to have a border and immigration laws? 4.
Is it ever okay to have a border and immigration laws? I mean, of the type that you would advocate, at least. I tend to favor a situation similar to what you see in the European Union, where people can move between countries relatively easily. I think a more cosmopolitan society also happens to be a more peaceful one. Now, there are reasonable restrictions, such as in the case of violent criminals. But that's a conversation that is much too deep for a YouTube video.
At whatever point the American people and their duly elected representatives decide that that's the case. Right? If people want a border, which we have, by the way, they can have a fucking border. If the people of this country, if the majority of people in this country say, you know what, we don't like the border, let them in. It's open borders time. Then that's also the will of the people.
Okay, so TJ is making a very classical appeal to democracy. You know, if the majority of people decide that they want a border and immigration laws, then there should be a border and immigration laws because that's what the majority of people want. And I don't totally disagree, but I think that's a bit of an oversimplification. There are certain rights that are enshrined that cannot be taken away regardless of majority opinion, at least in principle. So the right to freedom of expression, the right to freedom of religion, and the relevant question here becomes, should the right to freedom of mobility, the ability to move between countries, be one of those rights? And I happen to lean in the direction that it should. Now, again, I think there are reasonable restrictions, but I'm much more inclined to favor open borders. We should also consider the fact that if we're going to make an appeal to democracy, that there are structural forces at play in most Western governments that actually undermine democracy. So there's a wonderful study by Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page of Princeton University, and it measured the impact that the average American has on public policy. And I'm going to read you one of the more relevant quotes. The preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon policy. So that should tell you that the government does not respond to the will of the people in the way that it should.
What percentage of the population do whites have to be before it's morally acceptable for them to be proud of their ancestors, their heritage?
No one is telling white people that they shouldn't be proud of their heritage. White people are constantly bombarded with messages to the contrary. It's people of color who are constantly told that they should not be proud of their culture and their heritage. So when they embrace pride in their culture, they do so in resistance to a white supremacist culture that has oppressed them.
I mean, from my perspective, having pride in, like, your pedigree is just stupid. Have pride in your own fucking accomplishments. You being Italian is not a fucking achievement. Just like you being black is not a fucking achievement.
No. Being black in and of itself is not an achievement. Surviving and thriving as a black person in a white supremacist culture is definitely an achievement. That's the difference.
When is it okay for a white guy to say, I am a proud, straight, white male?
Being a straight white male is also not an achievement. Being a straight white male in a culture that privileges straight white males is definitely not an achievement.
It's fine.
Yeah, who's stopping him? Who's fucking stopping him? A white guy who's a straight white dude could go out and be, I'm proud to be a straight white male. What's going to happen to him? Someone might disagree. It's about the worst that's going to happen. Someone might say, well, fuck you. I don't like straight white males. You don't think that happened to someone who's like, I'm proud to be a trans black woman? You're ridiculous. You're absurd. Yeah, everyone has the right to be proud. Everyone has the right to look at other people being proud and say, well, you're fucking stupid and I don't like you. You shouldn't be proud. You suck. Everyone has the right to have their pride. Everyone has their fucking right to heckle. Seems fair to me.
So let's review. According to TJ, everyone has the right to be proud of who they are, and everyone has the right to heckle, which I assume means tell people that they shouldn't be proud of who they are. The problem is that when we're in a culture that privileges straight white men will not be told that they shouldn't be proud of who they are, and everybody else will. So it's an unfair playing field.
6. What is so wrong when European women want to have white children who look like them? Instead of, ooh, your mixed race baby is so cute, how about, ooh, your little blonde blue-eyed baby is so adorable and unique?
Oh my, yeah, no one has ever complimented a woman on a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby before. Society would collapse. Surely society would collapse.
Okay, Tej, I actually have to give you some props for that one. You managed to answer one of these questions correctly.
7. For legal immigration alone, 1 million plus a year come to America. That's like importing a large city every...
Sorry, what's the question? How many non-European people need to be in the country before it's okay to say that's enough?
It's never okay to say that's enough on the basis of race alone. Race and country of origin should have no bearing whatsoever on whether or not someone is eligible to immigrate.
Once again, you can say that's enough. Plenty of people say that's enough. The president of the United States is a guy who says that's enough. People voted for him because he said that's enough. There's plenty of mainstream politicians who say that's enough. You act like this immigration issue has been pushed into the fucking underground. It hasn't. This is a very active issue being actively discussed within the framework of our fucking democracy right now. The fucking head honcho of the country is on your side. How long are you going to act like you're being persecuted? Do you find it scary that conservatives in the U.S. are moving farther and farther to the right? We're approaching on ethno-state territory. This is what they've always believed. This is what they've always believed. This is not new. This is not the late-breaking development. This is just conservatives realizing it's time to be honest. It's time to say, fuck the social mores and conventions that have held us back up to this point. We're just going to be honest and upfront. And if Trump, you can credit Trump with anything, I think you can credit him with that.
So TJ is mostly correct here, but I wouldn't treat Trump emboldening the right as a good thing. Okay, so in this next section, TJ and Lana just keep talking over one another, so it's really not possible to respond to them individually. But since they're both spouting bullshit, I'll just respond to them together.
8.
You already are saying it.
You liberals
No one's
claim to
stopping
be
you.
environmentalists, and yet you are not aware of the horrible environmental consequences of mass migration, not to mention the problem of limited resources and an overburdened physical infrastructure.
I mean, that's a planet-wide problem. Those people are still going to do their polluting elsewhere on the planet. It's all a big interconnected system. It's not like America has its own environment that's separate from the rest of the fucking planet. I agree with you, but it's not mass migration that's the problem there. It's overpopulation. There are too many fucking humans.
Oh boy. Okay. Overpopulation is a myth. Lana mentioned resource scarcity. That's complete bullshit. There is more than enough food for everybody on this planet. Here's an excerpt from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization Global Statistical Yearbook for the year 2012. The growth of global agriculture's productive potential has so far been more than sufficient to exceed population growth, resulting in a steady, albeit slow increase in average per capita food availability. For the world as a whole, per capita food availability has risen from about 2,220 kilocalories per person per day in the early 1960s to 2,790 kilocalories per person per day in 2006, while developing countries even recorded a leap from 1,850 kilocalories per person per day to over 2,640. This growth in food availability, in conjunction with improved access to food, helped reduce the percentage of chronically undernourished people in developing countries from 34% in the mid-1970s to just 15% 3 decades later. And here, let's take a look at this data from the World Bank measuring global birth rates. As you can see, they're going down. Now this is a global average. Let's take a look at what we get when we go country by country. For Afghanistan, the average woman in 1960 was having 7.5 children. In 2016, that number dropped to 4.6. How about Canada? Women were having an average of 3.8 children in 1960. In 2016, it was 1.6. How about China? Everybody's always talking about the extreme birth rates in China. China went from an average of 5.7 children per woman in 1960 to 1.6 in 2016. In India, the average woman went from having 5.9 children in 1960 to 2.3 in 2016. And we could go on down the list for every single country. Let's do the United States. Let's just finish this off. 3.7 children in 1960, 1.8 in 2016. It astounds me that TJ calls himself a skeptic, and yet he can't even do the most basic level of fact-checking. I mean, okay, I won't lie. That was about a half hour of research. It wasn't just as simple as type into Google birth rates and overpopulation. You actually have to go and make sure that you're looking at credible sources and that the things that you're referencing can be verified. But I mean, come on. Okay? For a person who markets himself as a thought leader, which he most definitely does, to be presenting such pathetically inaccurate information is just laughable.
Speaking of refugees, did you know there are people getting rich off the importing fake refugee business? 10. According to international law, refugees...
I thought you were gonna explain that.
Nope.
No. Did you know that? I guess I didn't.
I didn't.
No. You learned me.
Yeah, that's a good response. Except I would add that it's probably not true. There probably aren't millions and millions of people getting rich off the fake refugee trade, whatever that happens to be. I'm skeptical as to whether such a thing even exists. I'm not going to try and fact-check it because it doesn't even matter. Even if there were people making false refugee claims and somehow making enormous sums of money from it, I would not be hesitant to support refugees seeking safety from the horrible conditions that they are fleeing.
These are supposed to go to the country nearest to them. So why isn't Israel and rich Gulf countries taking in any refugees?
That's not true. The law that she's misquoting comes from the 1967 Protocol Update to the Geneva Convention, and what it states is essentially this. Let's say that we have a refugee who is fleeing persecution from, let's say, Saudi Arabia. He takes a flight to the United Kingdom, and from there, he takes another flight to Canada. And while he's in Canada, he applies for refugee status. Now, under this law, since he stopped in the United Kingdom first, and the United Kingdom is designated as a safe country, Canada can request that the UK be the one to provide him refugee status. Now, that doesn't mean Canada always does it. Just because they have that option doesn't mean that they employ it every time. It's just an option that has been given to countries if they don't happen to be the first safe place that a refugee lands. Safe place. Safe place being a key component of this law. But there is no legal restriction on anyone applying for refugee status in any country.
All those refugees, do you even know how many are actually fleeing from catastrophic conditions and not just their own poverty? Like, this much.
Wait. Why is fleeing their own poverty not a justifiable reason to immigrate? God, Lana, you are really subhuman scum, you know that? Fuck. Poverty is structural violence. Make no mistake, it is as violent and destructive as a gunshot to the face. We've already established that there's more than enough food for everybody on this planet. So why are 800 million people starving? Because the political situations where they happen to live do not allow for the equitable distribution of that food, and a big reason for that is capitalism. And here we have Lana. And it's pretty clear from the way she phrases that question that she wants these people in developing nations to remain impoverished. So if you ever wonder why I think conservatives are trash, this is why. They want people to suffer.
Poverty, we have to give them a chance at a better life to become surgeons, inventors, and rocket scientists in European nations. Says who? Are you saying they can't do it without white people? That they need us to succeed? Well, what's wrong with their people? That's supremacist.
Says who? Says any decent human being, that's who. And as for the claim that in coming to quote-unquote European nations, they are tacitly acknowledging that they need the help of European people have been destroying the global south through colonialism, through resource extraction, through interference in local politics for the better part of 500 years. They're playing with a stacked deck. All these people want is a shot at the wealth that we took from their countries.
Oh, yeah. You really turned that around on us. I don't think, I mean, like, I've never heard a single person ever say, we need to let Juan Menendez over here from Mexico because we think he stands a real solid chance of being a rocket scientist. You know? Usually he's over here to pick fruit or something.
Actually, TJ, many people recognize the potential in immigrants. In many cases, we have them picking fruit, not because they are incapable of doing more complex jobs, but because that is all the legal structures to which they have been subjected will allow them to do. For instance, in Ontario, we have doctors driving taxi cabs. Why? Because Ontario won't recognize their credentials. And before you make some bullshit claim like, oh, well, that's because their credentials aren't as good, in many cases they are just as qualified as local doctors.
12. You want to help people? Why don't you go help them in their country? But you all never care to help European nations when they're in need. Why?
What?
Oh my God, Lana. I mean, have you heard of the Peace Corps? Let's just do a little Googling, shall we? According to their website, over 230,000 Americans have served in the Peace Corps. And then there's Doctors Without Borders. According to their annual report, in 2016, Doctors Without Borders had over 9 million outpatient consultations, over 671,000 patients admitted, and over 92,000 major surgical interventions. Many people do go to other countries to help the people there. But you can't necessarily fix the political situation in other countries. Individuals don't have that much power, And so we still have people fleeing political persecution, fleeing physical violence, and needing a safe place to go. God. And just listen to the disdain in her voice. Oh, just go help them over there, just as long as they don't come here. I mean, Lana, you really are subhuman scum. Like, just the worst kind of garbage.
Fuck.
Filthy rich celebrities making anti-white trash films. Why aren't you taking in any refugees into your house surrounded by a wall in an upscale, gated community?
Perhaps because the structural violence inflicted on ordinary people by capitalism has resulted in a situation where they can barely take care of themselves?
14. Who made you the...
I mean, like...
Because that's my home.
If you want to ask that to J.K. Rowling, go ahead. But for most people, that doesn't apply. That doesn't apply to me. I don't have fucking room in here for a bunch of refugees. And once again, I don't care about refugees to the extent where I'm going to fucking be like, yeah, I'm going to take one in. Like, there's different levels of passion about ideas. Just because I don't fucking openly despise refugees doesn't mean I want to fucking have one as my pet.
Have a refugee as a pet. I offer now as the time to try to convince me that TJ isn't just a racist piece of shit. Who made me the morality police? No, you know what, Lana? Human garbage like you does not get to ask me that question, okay? I do not owe you, of all people, any explanations. Go fuck yourself. Stupid Nazi jerk. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. I'm gonna go pop some painkillers and jump in the shower. See ya at the next video. Hey there, it's Rich, reminding you to like, subscribe, and click the bell. And if you like science fiction, then go check out the Justice Keeper Saga. It's amazing. That's all for today. Bye!